Welcome to another edition of the Intrigue Podcast. Ryan Ray alongside Doctor, I will not call you kiddo, Ellen Wald.
Oh boy, oh boy. Yeah, I should have that's a great way to start. So yeah, now do I look like some sort of like total, I don't know, creep for like actually using the title doctor, though I am not a medical doctor. I'm
So,
not a medical doctor. We've confirmed this. I
yeah,
mean, is this like really my place of work? Do I get to use it professionally here? I don't
so
know.
I saw you were the first person I saw talk about that on Twitter. I never read the whole article.
Don't bother. It's basically about the author. It has
Right.
nothing to do with Joe Biden. It's all about him and his own insecurities.
So a lot of the headlines I saw after that was that he apparently called her kiddo. And that was
So,
what got a lot of people mad more than maybe anything else was that, not
yeah.
the distinguishing of the doctor. But I thought it was interesting because we joked about you being a doctor and all that stuff. So I did want to kind of, poke fun a little
No,
bit at it.
yeah, it's funny. I mean, I was, I saw that columm. The idea that they did use the term kiddo, I think is really offensive and that the editor put that through.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I get the like weirdness about using like whether or not you use the term doctor or not. And like, I tend to not, the only time I will really insist on it is when I'm teaching, like
Mhm.
students, I've had students call me ma'am and I'm cool with that. Um, I kind of like it. It's much more prevalent in the South.
Mhm.
I was never called ma'am until I started teaching at the University of Georgia. And someone's going to say, "Can I hold your books for you, ma'am?" Like I'm not going to
Right.
say no. That was very
How
polite
dare
and
you?
nice.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, the students need to call me professor or doctor,
Yeah.
and that's fine. And I think like the UK has a very specific kind of taxonomy when it comes to that. Like if you're a certain like type of faculty member, you can be called professor, but otherwise you have to be called doctor. And in the Middle East, a lot of people call me Dr. Ellen,
Mhm.
even though like I'll be like, just call me by my first name, but they'll still call me Dr. Ellen, which, I mean, I like to, like, I worked for the title and I'll use it professionally, but like, I've never insist upon it. Although when I have published a bunch of op-eds in the New York Times and they refuse to include PhD or doctor or anything like that.
Okay.
Although a friend of mine, like a friend from high school he's a professor at Sarah Lawrence. He had an op-ed published and they referred to him as doctor. So I was kind of pissed. I was like, how come he gets it and I
Right.
don't? So I asked the editor of the New York Times, and they were like, we don't refer to anyone that way. But that was a lie, obviously, because
Right.
both he and apparently Cornell West get to use the term doctor. So, yeah, I mean, whatever, like, you can have a conversation about whether it's appropriate to do that or not, but like, don't call someone kiddo.
Yeah.
That's
I
just
will. I will say the
gross.
first time I ever spoke to you on the Global Introduced podcast, I asked if you want me to call you doctor, and you said that very same thing. Listen, I only make my students call me doctor. My stance on it as a non-college graduate, a lowly high school grad here, is I'm. It depends on. First off, it's a lot of work to get your doctorate, so I'm happy to call someone doctor, whether they're a medical doctor, a historian, or whatever. That doesn't bother me. Um, I do think that, and I think me and you probably talked about this on the show, or at least offline. I do think that some of the PhDs out there, when you read their dissertations, they're a lot more proud of their dissertations than they should be. It-
Sorry.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Uh, agree or disagree?
Yeah, I mean, I will never like use that on like if I'm buying a plane ticket or anything like that, because like I don't want people to actually think that I could like do anything medical. Like no one's ever stood up in an airplane and been like, "Is there a historian on the
Yes.
plane?" I'm like, "Oh
Hey,
well."
Harry, it's history. Yeah. So I don't have a problem with it. I do think that there's doctorate the people like yourself who have doctorate who are normal humans and like, yeah, my friends call me Ellen or whatever. And then my students need to call me ma'am or doctor because that's the setting. And then there's some that are like, I've got a doctorate. You go read their dissertation, you're like, you okay, I'm sorry. Like I'll call you doctor, but I don't know. So
We use it with endearment on this
yeah.
show.
Yes. Well,
No
obviously,
one is
you are
obligated to
doctor.
call me doctor unless you are currently my student.
That's right. But no,
Basically.
it's a funny discussion because some people take it really serious, some people don't. Some people are doctors that don't even know it, and so it's
Hey.
it is funny. But I will say this as an aside: if you do know me and you are a doctor, and I call you doctor, and like not like I do Ellen, I call Ellen all the time. But if I do call you doctor, that's because I don't know your name, and I use that as a ploy to forget people's name. I don't remember the name. Like I'm Dr. Smith. Like, oh, okay, Doc. And so I'll go around. Oh, hey, Ellen, this is Doc. Then Doc will, So I use that all the time. So if you hear me calling you Doc when I'm introducing you, it's because I do not know your name, and I've just not decided to learn your name because I can call you Doc. So I do use it. Is that now? If they knew that, they'd probably be insulted, right?
I don't know. I don't think people should be. I mean, I think everyone got all up in a tizzy, but I think the tone of that piece was real. I mean, I once an editor once referred to me in writing as a smart cookie, and I was really upset by that because it was really obnoxious. And so I think it was more like the tone of it than the fact like, hey, let's have a discussion about when people think it's appropriate to use these terms and like whether it really means what they think it means or what they want it to mean. Personally, I think if you want to insist that people call you doctor, go for it. But some people are going to think you're like stuck up and snooty. But if you don't care, then you don't care. Go for it. Like whatever people want. I don't know. I don't think people should make such a big deal out of this.
Well, I will call you Dr. Wald for the podcast. So
yes, for the rest of this podcast, I will only answer to Dr. Wald or Dr. Ellen or ma'am.
We have Dr. Foreman coming on. We have dual doctors on.
Hey, yeah, we're gonna duke it out over who has the most right to use the term doctor.
There we go.
This is coming.
Okay, let's go to Axios. Planet FWD Planet Forward, I guess, debuts carbon neutral snacks. Okay, I saw this. I got on Google, and maybe this has been there for a while, and I don't know. I can't get it to replicate this, but I got on Google this morning, and it said carbon neutral. Yeah, okay. If you go to google.com, at the very bottom, it says carbon neutral since 2007. Has that been there for a long time, and I just not noticed it?
I've never noticed it, so you're way ahead of me.
If you just go to google.com and hit enter, at the very bottom it says carbon neutral since 2007. That cannot be true, right?
They buy a lot of carbon offsets.
Yeah. Financially speaking, but not.
Yeah, that's what carbon neutral means these days. It means that you buy a lot of carbon offsets.
Yes.
Oh yeah, it does say that. Huh? Who knew? Here, let's click on it and see what it says. They also have Christmas lights on their little Google thing. So maybe they and now they want to be carbon free by 2030. That's it. All the people are getting fired and they are switching to silicon-based life forms. I know that carbon free technically means like we're not burning any carbon, but I really think that that's a bad phrase and should be excised because we're all based on carbon. We are carbon life forms.
Yeah.
Embrace the carbon.
It's a terrible way to phrase it. And then the other thing, as you mentioned, your employee. Let's say that the entity Google somehow is carbon free. However that works, you still have employees that are driving to work, driving back from work, that are smoking, burning diesel, doing all the stuff that terrible humans.
They're gonna refuse to let their employees take airplanes, I assume, because they want to be carbon free.
Right.
So
So that's the point with all that. So anyway.
Okay, well, wow, that's a lot of information about Google's
Yes.
Okay, but can we discuss carbon neutral crackers?
Yes.
Because the really important burning issue on every consumer's mind these days is how can I make sure that my snacks are carbon neutral?
And do they taste good? If they are carbon neutral, do I get carbon credits for eating them?
Oh, yeah. And then, but your body is going to burn them and turn them into fuel, emitting CO2 in the process, right? Because that's when you breathe out. You breathe out CO2. There's just no way to make a carbon neutral product. You're going to have to breathe your CO2 into something and collect it. And
that's what the masks
that's the masks are for. Oh,
breathing it in.
Collect your CO2. That way you can rebreathe in your CO2. Oh my God. Wow. There's so much in here so I really want to know what regenerative agriculture is, obviously, but also, okay, so I saw this and I looked at the picture on Axios and I was like, I really want rosemary crackers. And so I went home and I realized I didn't have any crackers, But if I drive to the store to get crackers in my SUV that runs on gasoline, then I will be burning carbon, and then I won't my desire for crackers will be contributing to the carbon pollution, the pollution of the planet. And so I decided that I should make my own crackers so I wouldn't have to get in my car with ingredients that I already have in my house. And so I did. I baked my own crackers, and I am officially going to call them low carbon crackers. I really think that this is the new phase. Forget low fat, forget low salt, forget low carb. We are now in low carbon.
Well,
not low carbohydrate, low carbon crackers.
If they're low carb and they're low carbon, like you might
low carb squared.
Yeah, low carb square.
So my crackers were made out of stone ground white whole wheat flour. Not stone ground. I don't know. Whatever King Arthur was selling the day that I needed to buy whole wheat flour. I don't usually bake with whole wheat flour, but I happen to have whole wheat flour, that I need to use. They contain, here's the only ingredients: whole wheat flour, olive oil, salt, water, and rosemary, which I picked from my garden. I do not have an olive tree though, so I did not press my own olive oil. I did it, but I already had it. So the only real inputs here were the electricity that I used for my food processor, which was only like maybe 10 seconds worth of energy, and the oven. My oven is an electric oven, so it's not a gas oven, an electric oven. And I realized that for the state of Florida, this was last year's energy profile, really only has like 4% renewables, and most everything is gas.
Hold on. I've been meaning to tell you about this. So, we have a nuclear power plant by our house. And I know one of the guys that works here, and I was talking to him, and he says that our nuclear power plant serves 450,000 homes. Okay, this one little plant.
Are you one of them?
Yeah, I would suspect. I mean, we're within throwing distance. But he said that one of their plants in their network or owned or whatever serves Jacksonville, Florida.
So perhaps my crackers are more low carbon than I thought, because they could be made with partial nuclear energy.
Yeah. So okay. On nuclear.
I don't know, but I should have done a little more research before this podcast to figure it out. But anyway, so for those who are, and I'm sure everyone is dying to know, did my low carbon crackers taste good? Right?
Oh yes, I'm dying.
The answer is yes. And if I could feed everyone on the internet, I would offer you a taste. I like them. I like them a lot. I think in the future I'd up the little more olive oil, a little less water, and maybe like a mixture of whole wheat and regular flour, because like it's very intense whole wheat. But they were quite good, and I ate them with my tuna salad for lunch today. So low carbon crackers are the way to go. The big question is, where can I find VC money to support this venture of mine?
Actually, because
they raised $2.5 million in seed funding. So
let's see here. Julia Collins, who co-founded and co-led Zoom Pizza, has a new job. Entrepreneur in residence at Clio Capital, an early-stage VC scout fund that relies entirely on female entrepreneurs. So there you go. So she'll support my low carb. Now I just have to figure out how to make them low carbohydrate. Maybe I should start low carbohydrate. Low's relative. Oh. So you make like a high carbon and a high carb one, and then you have your low carb model.
My low carb model, yeah. Low carb. Yeah. Maybe I should just advertise them as low carb, and people will think it means low carbohydrate when actually I mean low carbon.
Low carb ...
Anyway, now that I've made fun of Planet FWD's moonshot rosemary, they made rosemary garlic. I don't really like raw garlic, so I didn't put garlic in my crackers. I just used rosemary and olive oil. Okay. But anyway, for the masses who are interested in a low carbon snack, I advise that you consider making your own crackers, because it's really, really easy. Like really freaking easy. I think it was the easiest thing I've cooked in a long time.
There we go. All right, Miss Wald, let's talk about, speaking of low carbon, OPEC is lowering its oil forecast for 2020. Cut it by what, 350,000 barrels a day, right?
Oh yeah, this was the talk of the town this morning. Is
But
OPEC cutting its growth forecast?
right, but then they raised their output by what, 500 barrels, right?
OPEC, we are putting another 500,000 barrels per day on the market, and we're cutting our growth. But remember, it's like always an OPEC meeting,
Right.
so they're going to meet. They're definitely meeting January 4th. And so some people were saying that they think that this report is like basically designed to get them to not increase by another 500,000 barrels per day in February. I don't know.
Well, yeah, there's that. Then also we were talking offline that New York's talking about another full bore shutdown, and so it's not unreasonable for anyone right now in the oil market to be thinking that demand could plummet over the next few months, because there's plenty of talk about, we have variant strains of COVID-19 in England, and I think they're back up to tier 3, which I think is on the bad side of the tiers for them, right? They go up in tiers.
They go up instead of down.
I think
They're not
so.
color coded. Wasn't there somewhere that has like 6 different color variations?
Light
You're getting
yellow,
into like
yellow green,
mauve, taupe, aquamarine.
aquamarine. So yeah, I appreciate someone saying that the demand might be down in 2021, because it feels like everywhere else you go, it's like, oh, demand's high, demand's up. It's like, surely it can't be up that much. So, so you think?
Well, here's my other favorite thing. Okay, so we're still wondering, like, why in the world did oil? So oil was down, and then it went back up to 50, and I'm like, but Germany just announced hard lockdown. Um, New York wants the lockdown. Netherlands, like what's going on? So a lot of people were like, the sell-off is coming. So if you're interested in what Twitter has to say, Twitter thinks that this rally is not going to last and a sell-off is coming.
How big of a sell-off? Because I got 35 a year, so I need a $15 sell-off.
I don't know.
Well, Brent's
a good question.
Right? It's still
Brent's like 49 something.
According to oilprice.com, it's at 50.12 right now. Of course, that's a little
really?
Yeah.
Because it was down at like 40.
It's up 15 cents. So
okay, because earlier it was down to 49.13.
That's a 10-minute delay. So
Well, someone says that Trump is going to attack Iran in the next 2 weeks for sure.
Okay,
so
I will bet a lot of money that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
a lot of money.
Yeah,
mainly because Trump hasn't attacked just about anyone except for a very few strategic strikes here and there. Compared to
he's attacked Qasem Soleimani.
Yeah, well, right, but compared to what Obama and he's pretty much a peacetime president. So
yeah,
I don't think that'll happen. Anyways, so demand down. Let's see here. Speaking of demand, we'll skip over next door. We'll come back to it if we have time.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Iran sends shipload to Venezuela oil in defiance of sanctions. Ms. Wall, this is something that the market might have to deal with. Could Venezuelan production pick up in 2021?
Oh my God, I feel like we need to ask the Venezuela expert, can Venezuelan production pick up? Iranian production, I think, can, and I think they're banking on it, and they're basically like planning to increase production and send it to Venezuela. Venezuela, I think, would like to import it if it can, and I have a feeling it will be allowed to. Maybe it won't be like, formally okay, but I certainly don't think that anyone's going to stop them any soon. But Venezuelan oil production, so it's interesting. I remember way back, it was a couple years ago, I was thinking like, well, if they really manage to get rid of this government and they want to do something great with, Venezuelan oil production, there's so much potential there. Mm-hmm. Actually, I really do think that there is a lot of potential there, both for the Venezuelan people and also for other people in the world to make money. But everything is so broken down there unless they have the money to invest and get stuff from Iran and China. I'm not sure I'm seeing a big pickup in Venezuelan production.
So give me in your opinion, off the top of your head, maybe the least 3 stable OPEC nation states.
From oil production. 3 most stable from the oil production. Least stable. Least stable. Okay, Libya. Okay. I don't think that's very stable.
Yeah.
I don't think Iran is very stable.
Okay.
And yeah, probably Venezuela.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
And so if you look at the other two, so it's like Iran and Libya, Libya for now at least has its acts together and is putting on, what they're doubling or tripling their production over the last 6 months, something like that. They went from 500,000 to 1.3 million barrels a day is what their goal is.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Basically,
Okay.
yeah.
And then Iran is going to try to increase. I only say to say that as bad a shape as Venezuela's in, you look at some of these other places and they can turn it on for at least a period of time and get it going. So it is possible that you could see Venezuela turn around quicker than maybe you would.
That's true. I think also Iraq. I forgot to add. I think Iraq is very unstable. I think for political reasons, and I think that could bleed into the oil sphere, whether it's up or down. I could see it being unstable up or down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what his stance and what he's going to do with Venezuela. I would assume. I guess really on the Venezuela stuff, you had to figure out what China's role, because they have so much. Their hands are so deep into those pockets. But I don't know. I just we're talking about this morning. I got to think about it. No one's talked about Venezuela in so long. Obviously, they have a lot of problems down there. But if you just look at Libya, just to use that example, I mean, when they dropped below 1 million barrels a day, was last year? This time last year when Venezuela dropped below 1 million barrels, right?
That's a good question. I could check. I will check.
Yeah, let's see here.
I usually use Platts, so to kind of have a look-see. When did Venezuela?
So if I can get this to pull up here. No, this is crude oil production, 1,000 barrels. Yeah, so no, it'd been 18, I guess. Right, so 1,000 barrels a day is 1 million barrels a day, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so they've been May of 18.
Okay.
So, but back in 16, you're over 2 million barrels a day.
Wow.
So, anyways, so I don't know. I guess we'll see. But okay. Let's see, Dean.
Yeah, I think part of it is an equipment issue, though. A lot of their stuff has been degrading, and so it could take long. Remember with the upgraders and all that stuff, It's not quite as easy because it's such heavy oil than other areas.
Okay. And up next for a very focused discussion on the oil and gas markets is Dr. Dean Foreman with the American Petroleum Institute. Dr. Foreman, come on down. It is good to have you on, sir.
Ryan, Ellen, it's great to be here and great to see you one last time before the end of the year here.
It is the end of the year. It is the end of the year, end of 2020. And I'm going to presume that by 2021, whatever you send us will look a lot better than it did for the past 8 months. Can I bet on that?
Well, if we're not talking aesthetics, hopefully we're talking about the quality of the outlook. But I would expect that things will look up over the course of the next year. No question about it if we get a vaccine.
Okay. All right.
I for one, would just like to say that I like API's logo redesign, which I think you did roll out in 2020. So aesthetics look good.
Okay, well, I haven't got to talk about a 5-year range chart in a long time, but now I get to talk about one. Total U.S. demand returned to 19.1 million barrels a day, which is inside the 5-year range. This is for November. That's an important indicator, I think.
I think so, too, and that's why our theme this month is celebrating normalcy. Having a return back into the 5-year range, back above 19 million barrels per day. Is it great? Is it 2019 levels? No, but it is back within the 5-year range. It is a sense of progress that, if you're just trying to measure where we were back in April and compare, we're up almost 30% since April in terms of the increase. So it really has, there are some structural impacts that are going on here, and we could talk about digitization and other technologies that affect the longer term impact. Digitization actually has it's one of the driving forces between the all-time record high productivity that we're seeing at the well level is in this environment to get the most out of every resource going in. You're having a lot of companies investing in remote monitoring, digital technologies, data analytics, real-time learning, things that really are improving productivity in areas that we hadn't thought that even just a couple of years ago would be possible to increase even more. So it's been a good year from that standpoint, even though it's been a really tough operating environment for our members.
So Ellen and I talked after Thanksgiving about the TSA numbers and how they were down. And then last week we talked about the gas demand numbers for the week of Thanksgiving, how they were down. So when you're saying that the demand's up, but some of the stuff we've looked at has said, no, it's not. So where are you seeing the demand return? Because some of the headlines would lead you to believe that it's not back yet. So where is it coming back at?
Well, what was interesting about last month is it wasn't gasoline. In fact, gasoline month on month from October went down despite the fact that we had holiday travel. Now, normally there is a decrease, just a seasonal decrease in the total amount of driving that occurs between October and November, but this was a more than average decrease. So we didn't see as much of a blip of, an increase of Thanksgiving driving as we otherwise might have seen. That said, the reason that overall demand rose, diesel, distillates across the board, both from the industrial side and freight transport, were up. The freight transport indicators, up. On top of that, jet fuel picked up, and instead of being down 40% year on year as it was in October, it was down by 30%. So a big move within a month, based presumably on more people willing to fly because of probably Thanksgiving. So we'll see where that heads through the rest of the holidays and into next year. But directionally, it's improvement from an air traffic standpoint. And in October, when we looked at this, we said, well, jet fuel is up. It looks like they've been replenishing fuel supplies back at the ability to fill it level, but not actual traffic going with it. And this month, we did see the traffic pick up. So that, in terms of scheduled and actual flights that went on schedule, it was an improvement. The last area, and we've never seen this go higher, by the way, and we didn't really tease this out in the report, but the other oils, as we call them, this is naphtha and gas oil that go into the refining and petrochemical sector as both, mainly intermediate products, but a final product that then helps, produce the things that you need to get into the petrochemical arena. This is normally about a quarter of U.S. petroleum demand. Last month, it was up to 30%. That's the highest we've seen on record. And year on year, that section's up. I mean, it's up more than 5% year on year. So that's good progress that's showing increased petrochemical demand, increased refining throughput that's going with it. And the fact that if you think about what COVID-19 has done in terms of a resumption of the demand for single-use plastics, for propylene and its derivatives, going through, there really has been a resurgence in that segment of petroleum, even though the driving was less year on year.
Yeah, that's actually the thing that stood out to me the most was the demand for naphtha was up. And so I was thinking, I was like, so what do we use naphtha for? Because I was wondering if we could figure out, exactly, like, is it petrochemicals? Is it? So I did a little reading, and it says the main uses of naphtha fall into the general areas of solvents or diluents for paints, dry cleaning solvents, solvents for cutback asphalt, solvents for the rubber industry, and solvents for industrial extraction processes. And I know that you also use naphtha when you're trying to dilute really thick, like oil from like tar sands or from Venezuela, that they use as a diluent for that. So we really are talking about all petrochemicals here.
All petrochemicals, it's basically a light oil, though, and it can go into a variety of different things through the refining sector. If you were looking at different ways of making certain petrochemicals, you would normally have ethane competing against propane and even naphtha around the world. So there's also an international demand for naphtha that goes with that from a petrochemical standpoint, and that you have, and the common denominator actually is throughout Asia Pacific, naphtha would be your main feedstock for making polyethylene and other things. So
it's interesting that it took this long, though, for it to show up. So I think that everyone kind of believed that we would see an increase in petrochemical demand because of this whole issue globally, both because of single-use plastics, but also because of increased demand for all sorts of things. And so it's interesting that I guess it takes kind of took until November for us to really see this in the numbers in in the United States. I wonder, it would be interesting to compare it to, like, say, China or areas that were hit in different times.
That's a good point, and we don't get good real-time data out of China on anything that's granular, where we could really track it. We do know from an overall industrial production standpoint that China has come back stronger and earlier than many other nations. So you would look at that trend in terms of industry coming back, trade flows resuming. And we see this secondarily through the fuels on the international side with the US, where our exports of liquefied natural gas, and this would feed utilities across Europe and Asia, but that just hit a record level in November. It never been higher, and it appears as if it's poised to grow both in capacity and output based on the resumption in pricing, and that coming back to more normal levels compared to where it was in the summer. So I think there are a number of indicators that lend toward normalcy, if you will, and celebrating that. Are we back completely? No. It's going to take some time, and we have some uncertainties going forward about the vaccine progress and this battle going on between, you've got this race up in cases right now with a race to get the vaccine out. So we'll see, how that battle works out early next year.
It's also interesting, though, because you wonder, is this going to be is this increase sustainable? So are we at the precipice of seeing an expansion of petrochemicals? I mean, if you look, and I said this on Twitter, and it got actually picked up in a couple of places, but I was this morning, I was watching on the news as they are, waiting in this, Michigan hospital room, or some pharmacist or whatever in this room, they're waiting for these vaccines, and they're pulling them out of the boxes, and all I can see everywhere is styrofoam. I mean, literally, like, the place is crawling in plastic. And it's like a little box of vials, I guess, or whatever it is. And it's got plastic peanuts under it. It's packed, the whole box is packed in styrofoam. There are boxes up to here. They've got a refrigerator, to keep it at negatives. And I'm thinking, like, this whole thing is being powered by the fossil fuel industry and the petrochemicals industry. I mean, this entire operation would be totally impossible if we didn't have cheap fossil fuels. And so we're now seeing this, in the numbers, and I'm wondering, is this a temporary thing? In 2 years, say, if we're, like, back to normal, are we going to go back to seeing declines in these, or is this part of an upward wave in the petrochemical and chemicals industries? I don't know.
There's no question it's going to be cyclicality to it. And globally, you continue to see expansions both in refineries and petrochemicals, and their regional competition among, whether you try to locate it in the countries where the demand growth, the emerging markets where the demand growth is strongest, or whether you get these world scale refineries and petchem integrated plants along the Gulf Coast, for example, and then export the product. And the advantage that we have is the advantage feedstock. We've got relatively inexpensive ethane as a result of the shale revolution. And the more we grow LNG exports, and that tends to be pure methane, dry gas, but when you produce it, when it comes out of the Permian Basin and other places, you've got to take those natural gas liquids out of that gas to have the dry gas to export. So there's another complementarity where it feeds the domestic petrochemical industry. It also gives the ability to have things like ethane and naphtha themselves that could be exported. And that's helped us really see a growth in petrochemical trade globally that didn't exist 20 years ago, 10 years ago even. So you have these pellets of polyethylene that we use rail cars as rolling storage in the US, unlike anywhere else in the world. It's an inventory management system. And we have this tremendous logistical system to move this, and a market that's really grown throughout Asia. So as that continues to go, I think it's another follow-on impact, and it's a reason why you have more energy intensive industry the likes hasn't been seen in a generation come back to the US as a result of it.
Can we talk about rig count? Because I found that rig count is a very rig count's been very interesting over these past couple months, and I've kind of been keeping a little track of it myself and watching as it went down, 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 and now coming up, but it's very uneven. We've seen increases and decreases of as many as like 10 or 12 rigs. I think is this data telling us anything? Is there even a story here? And if there is, what is the story that rig count is telling us?
Well, so let's look at the Baker Hughes data. I mean, and just go back. The average for the month of November, 234 rigs. A year ago, that was 678 rigs. So, there you are. But then if we're just looking at, I guess, oil-directed rigs, they went up by, for the month, 30 rigs or 15% for the month, and almost 60 rigs over 2 months. That's a big deal. Now that ends up being a bounce. I've seen commentary out there saying, well, none of this is sufficient, given that you started at 600 to 700 rigs to sustain production, but yet here we are increasing production off of the lows that we hit over the summer. Productivity, by EIA's estimates, has hit these all-time highs. We started out commenting on how high that is and the technologies and process innovations that are behind it. That's why we're able to sustain more. And we wouldn't expect all of this to stick. I mean, in this environment, what we're seeing is people drilling their very best, most prospective targets using the most efficient and productive rigs and crews that they have on staff. Off you go. And as the market normalizes and the U.S. competes with OPEC and others to supply a market that hopefully recovers along with the economy next year, then the ability to spool back up in the Permian Basin and other places becomes, you're going to then put these rigs and crews back together, reassemble them, and see what productivity you get. There probably will be some backsliding or reversion that goes with that, but many of the processes that are going in place that are increasing efficiency are likely to have an enduring impact and be the new normal when we go forward. So hopefully this is the beginning of just ratcheting up and capturing some of these process and technological innovations that are helping the industry do more with less and survive in higher volume, higher volume in the future, hopefully, but a much more competitive environment than we've ever seen.
Yeah, let me ask you about the export, import, and crude inventories, because as you look at these, the export, and this report comes out on Thursday. It's not out yet, right? Or is it already out?
Yeah, it comes out this Thursday.
It comes out this Thursday. We'll link to it in the show notes. So the exports, you see, this is going back to April, May, June, that time period. You see for exports and imports a steep drop off, but for the inventories, they go up, but they don't go up. It seems as sharp as the others went down. So there was oil being pumped. It's going on in production. It feels like there's something I'm missing here in these charts. Where did this oil go that we don't see the inventories maybe ballooned as much as we're being led to believe back in April, May? Because back then the narrative was storage was full. We have where to put it. And according to these charts here, we have a lot of oil, but not as much as I would have thought as we're going into closeout 2020. What am I missing?
You're not really missing it. I think let's separate out the total inventories, which are high right now, are a combination of crude oil and then refined products on the other side. And they've backed off the ledge, right? They aren't sitting at the record high levels that they were several months ago. And it took a little while for all that to sort itself out after we hit that negative price for a day in April and all the fallout from that. And so over the summer, we hit some record levels for crude oil, and that's back down. And we're still, better part of 10% down from where we were at the record level. It's still strong, right? And it depends now on refiners being able to take that crude oil and turn it into something and what the market demand is. Refining activity, the throughput has been, we had 2 to 3 months of hurricane impacted, shut-in impacted activity levels. That comes back a bit, but it's still, we're talking 78% utilization rates of capacity instead of 90 plus like we had in 2019. What we're looking at there is that for a couple of months, a lot of the end-use products to consumers were being supplied out of inventories. So if you were mapping out a stack diagram of all the refined product inventories, you would have saw the summer where it blips up to this record level. But wow, right now, as of November, back down to pretty much normal levels across. Jet fuel is somewhat high, but we've been producing less jet fuel as a result of it. So even that inventory level is normalized a bit. So we end up coming back to, okay, now that the product inventories are back to kind of regular levels, crude oil relatively high, refiners are able to respond from this point forward to changes in demand conditions, which the outlook would suggest that if we've learned anything out of this downturn, it's that the economy and demand are going hand in hand. It has reinforced the strength of that inextricable relationship. So if the economy continues to recover, as is broadly expected, you would expect refiners that are able to supply and need to supply more product that fundamentally enables the transportation systems to go, for heating and cooling to go, for products to be made, all of these things that make the whole economy really go.
Right. And this isn't in the report, so you might not know the answer, but you're talking, maybe think about it. Usually refiners have shutdown periods where they're kind of fixing and doing maintenance. Because they've been so slow, have you guys heard what they've done so that next year, if things do pick up, will they have to have their normal kind of downtime, or are they kind of tooled up and ready to go in 2021 if things were to pick back up to previous levels? And again, you might not know the answer. You start talking about the question.
It would become anecdotal. I mean, at that point, my understanding is that we did go through, and this was part of utilization rates. You had your normal switch over to winter fuels. You had the normal maintenance. It's possible in this environment that some have tried to stretch out their maintenance cycles to the extent that you can do so, or have some operational flexibility to do so while maintaining integrity of those operations. So from a capital standpoint, we would observe, if we look industry-wide at the amount of capital investment that's been made, it's fallen recently. On the third quarter, it was actually the lowest on modern record for a quarter that we've had, less than half the weakest point of the great financial crisis. So we have seen, and that's not just the refining level investment, that's broadly across the entire spectrum of the industry, all of the value chain. That's not sustainable. You would expect, if the economy and the demand for the products is recovering, that the investment is also picking up in tandem with it.
Okay. Ellen, anything else from you?
Yeah, I think that about covered it for me.
Dr. Foreman, anything in the report that we missed that you wanted to highlight specifically that we did not touch on?
Let's see here. Back through. That's one point that's a really good U.S. energy security point, is that we've got the lowest, in almost 30 years, we have the lowest imports of crude oil, and in particular, the lowest it's lowest total petroleum, so products and crude combined for the U.S., and the lowest in 28 years, and also the lowest crude oil imports coming from OPEC in 28 years. So for those that are kind of keeping tabs on what the petroleum trade balance is for the U.S. and what that means for U.S. energy security, whether you call it independence, interdependence, dominance, whatever your favorite word is, it's a really strong point that having these imports be displaced, and we also talk about the quality differential between light and heavy crude oil and where it comes from. A lot of the heavy oil that we've imported has in recent years come predominantly from Canada. We used to get a small or diminishing rates coming from Venezuela, and then from Ecuador and Iraq and other places you can get some heavy oil of similar quality. But that we've seen refiners domestically increase their utilization of the light sweet crude oil that's being produced here at home. So that's a really important point, and it's a transition point that we'll see if, as demand normalizes and refining activity picks back up, whether those diverse sources kick back in. But it's a good sign that refiners have been really adapting to the environment in which they're given, and as a result, we've seen a narrower international versus domestic, or Brent versus WTI crude price differential as a result of that. So it really is market dynamics efficiently working and adjusting, and it's never been a more interesting time to watch how that's playing out.
Okay, well, Dr. Foreman, it is good to have you on for the last time of 2020, and I guess you'll probably be on a week later than normal because of the holidays in January.
I think that's right.
Okay. All right. So it might be, we usually record this the second week, I think. So maybe the third week of January, we'll get you on. And I guess you'll have maybe y'all's end of the year report out then.
We are, that'll complete the year from a monthly statistical reports. Yeah. I should note that we will also this Thursday be putting out our quarterly report as well. And I haven't sent that on, but that one it reaffirms a lot of the points that we're talking about the fact that you have this broad expectation that the economy is coming back. You have these points on energy security. You have some really positive points on trade, and we've already hit the record on the natural gas side. It's not just LNG, by the way. We've got record pipeline gas going to Mexico right now. So, some really strong underlying points of strength across North America and for the petroleum industry as a whole.
Okay, well, Dr. Foreman, it is good to have you on as always, and wish you and your family and everyone a Merry Christmas, and we will talk to you, and a Happy New Year, I guess, and we'll talk to you next year.
Thank you. Excellent. Look forward to it.
And that was Dr. Dean Foreman with the American Petroleum Institute. We did not have the battle of the doctorates, so we will not call either of y'all kiddo today. We will call y'all both honorable and respectable doctors. And so it was good to get Dr. Foreman on. And we might have another API talking point next week as we go through their quarterly. He did not get a chance to send that over, so we'll try to go through that, Ellen and I, next week on the show. And so, and reminds me, Ellen, we're talking to Dr. Foreman about doing his interview live. We've been doing these live. So if you go to Twitter, follow Ellen or myself, you can find out the information. The shows are live Mondays at 1 p.m. Central Time, so 2 p.m. Ellen time, which is Eastern Time, and they're about an hour, obviously. And so they're live on there. We've had some questions come through, and so we'll be happy to take questions as we can if folks do them. But the replay numbers have been really good, so we'll continue to do those if people like them. Miss Wald, with that being said, Dr. Wald.
Dr. Wald.
Sorry.
Dr. Energy.
Dr. Energy Wald. Where will you be this week?
This week, I will be on investing.com and possibly on Forbes. And I think that's it. I may be going on a competing podcast, which I don't want to, advertise on this, but it doesn't mean I'm cheating or anything. I think I'll be going on a podcast from the Institute for Energy Research.
Okay. And that reminds me, I listened to a podcast and they said something that we've talked about, and I was going to bring it up, and I can't remember. They had a good point about something tonight, and I can't remember what it was now. Oh gosh, I don't know. Anyways, so they were talking
next time.
Yes, maybe next time. Miss Wald, it was good as always. We'll be back next week, and we'll talk to you then.
Yep. Bye.